I stood in the kitchen, frozen, as my fingers clutched the thin sheet of paper that had just turned my world upside down. My breath caught in my throat, and the air felt too thick to swallow. The words didn't scream, but they didn't need to. They whispered a truth so loud it deafened me. $53,000. That's how much was gone. Spent. Stolen. Not by a stranger or some scammer halfway across the world, but by the woman I'd been trying to welcome into my family for 3 years. My daughter-in-law, the same one who smiled sweetly at my Sunday dinners and hugged me just tight enough to make me feel wanted. Her name was Lena. And now, all I could think about was how long she had been planning this, and how deep the betrayal really went. The paper in my hands trembled as I stared down at the itemized credit card statement. I refused to let the tears fall, but my eyes burned. Each line was a punch. Tiffany & Co. $18,000. Cartier. $22,000. Luxury Spa. $3,500. First-class tickets to Paris. $9,500. I sat down in the same kitchen chair where Robert, my husband of 38 years, used to drink coffee with me every morning. He died 3 years ago after fighting cancer with more grace than I thought humanly possible. His chair was empty now. But what filled the room wasn't grief anymore. It was fury wrapped in humiliation. I'd always been cautious, careful with money, the kind of woman who reused foil and cut coupons even when we didn't need to. That credit card had been in my purse, tucked safely into the wallet I barely touched unless I had to. So how did Lena get it? The moment the question crossed my mind, the answer followed like ice down my back. Last Sunday. She had come over with my son Ethan for dinner, like they always did once a week. She'd insisted on helping with the dishes, praised my cooking with that sugary voice of hers, and hugged me goodbye a little longer than usual. That's when it happened. That's when she must have taken it. Slipped her fingers into my purse like she'd slipped into our lives. So sweetly, so subtly, so strategically. The text had come the next morning. I still hadn't deleted it. I couldn't. It was burned into my mind. Love the treats, mother-in-law. Paris is magical. 2 hearts. The audacity of it. The smugness behind those words. Like this was all a game, and I was just the fool who didn't know the rules. That's what hurt the most. Not the money. Not even the theft. It was the assumption that I was too old, too soft, too desperate for peace to do anything about it. I walked to the window that overlooked my tiny backyard. The roses out there were the last thing Robert had planted before he got too weak to go outside. I'd been caring for them alone since then. Just like I'd cared for everything else. Alone. I thought the house was my safe place. Mine. But now even that felt violated. My phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look, but I did. Another text from Lena. Ethan and I are loving the suite. The balcony view is insane. You're the best gemstone bottle with popping cork kiss mark. Attached were pictures. Her draped in a white robe, holding a champagne glass, with diamond earrings I couldn't afford even if I sold half my furniture. She was standing in front of a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking Paris, like a queen on a stolen throne. My credit card had paid for every shimmering detail. I sat down again, feeling smaller than I'd ever felt. 3 years I'd tried to win Lena over. I complimented her fashion, praised her bland casseroles like they were gourmet, laughed at her snide jokes, and bit my tongue every time she threw a little jab about my outdated curtains or old-fashioned stories. I did all of it because I loved my son. Ethan was all I had left. My baby boy, who used to curl up next to me after nightmares, who held my hand at his father's funeral and promised me I'd never be alone. But promises don't mean much when someone else is whispering in your ear every day, rewriting your memories, bending your reality. The phone rang. Ethan. My heart leapt. Maybe he'd figured it out. Maybe he'd seen the charges. Maybe he'd finally realized what she was doing and was calling to say sorry, to say they were coming home, to make it right. I wiped my face and answered, trying to sound normal. Hi, sweetheart. Hey, Mom. His voice sounded tired, heavy. I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest with me. My stomach dropped. I didn't say anything for a moment, just braced myself. Of course, Ethan. What is it? Lena said you gave her permission to use your credit card for our anniversary trip. That you insisted on treating us. But now, she's worried you might be regretting it. The lie hit me so hard I had to grip the table just to keep from falling. I could barely breathe. What? I said, barely more than a whisper. Ethan, I never gave anyone permission to use my credit card. There was a silence. Then he said, carefully, she showed me messages. Said you told her to treat herself. That you were excited to surprise us. Mom, are you sure you didn't forget? And there it was. The trap. The twist of the knife. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was making me look like I was losing my mind. Forget. Ethan, I'm grieving, not senile. I remember what I say. And I did not give permission. This is theft. Another pause. He didn't speak right away. I could hear the shift though. His doubt colliding with discomfort. Let's just talk when we get back, okay? He said eventually. I don't want to ruin our trip over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I almost choked. Ethan, she spent $53,000. That's not a misunderstanding. Wait, $53,000? He sounded genuinely surprised now. She told me it was just a few thousand. Hotel and souvenirs. I clenched my jaw. He didn't know. Not the whole thing anyway. Not yet. Ethan, I said slowly, when you get back, check Lena's luggage. Check her jewelry box. Then ask yourself if a few $1,000s paid for all that. I didn't wait for his reply. I hung up. And I stared into the quiet, where my grief had just been replaced with something far more dangerous. Resolve. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lena's face in those Paris pictures. So smug, so proud, like she'd won something. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my chest tight, my hands clenched. I kept asking myself the same question. How did I let this happen? And slowly, the memories started coming back. It hadn't started with the credit card. No. This had been building for a long time. The first red flag should have been their wedding. That day, I showed up early, dressed in the navy blue suit Robert had always loved on me. But when I reached the reception, there was no seat for me at the family table. I ended up sitting next to Robert's distant cousins, watching Ethan dance with his bride while she smiled right through me. I had mentioned it gently to Ethan afterward. Must have been a mix-up, I said, trying to sound casual. He looked surprised. Oh, Mom, Lena was so stressed over the seating chart. I'm sure she didn't mean anything by it. I believed him. I always wanted to believe the best. Then came the photos. Every family photo they posted online looked like I didn't exist. I'd ask Lena about it, and she'd laugh. Oh, that one was just a quick shot, she'd say. We'll take a proper one with you next time. But next time never came. I remembered one Christmas, the first one after they got married. I spent 2 weeks knitting a soft cashmere scarf for Lena. Her favorite color, soft gray. I wrapped it with care, excited to see her reaction. She opened it in front of everyone, looked at it for 3 seconds, and said, "Oh, how thoughtful. I'm sure someone will love this." Then she tossed it aside. Weeks later, I saw the scarf hanging in their hallway closet. It still had a Goodwill tag attached to it. Even that, I'd swallowed. I told myself she was just young. Just busy. Just different. But Mother's Day broke something inside me. I'd made Ethan's childhood favorites: roast chicken, sweet potatoes, fresh biscuits. Lena had arrived late, snapping photos the moment she walked in. "This is so authentic," she said, posting pictures to Instagram. Like a cozy meal from the past. The way she said it made me feel like a dusty relic. A museum piece. And Ethan? He just laughed and told her to tag him in the post. That same day, as we sat at the table, Lena had started talking about their future. "We've been thinking about buying a bigger house," she said, her voice light. "Something newer, with better security. Maybe in a gated community." She looked around my modest home, the place Ethan had grown up in. The same home Robert and I had spent 38 years building with love. "But don't worry," she added sweetly. "We want to be nearby in case you need help. You know, with your age and all." I'd looked up from my plate. "I'm perfectly fine living alone." "Oh, I know you think you are," she replied with that smile. But things change quickly. Memory slips. Falls happen. It's just something Ethan and I worry about. I remember the way Ethan looked at me then. Not like his mom. Not with warmth. But like I was something fragile. Something that might break at any time. That's when it started. Lena began reorganizing my purse when I wasn't looking. She'd say things like, "Oh, it was such a mess, I just wanted to help." Then she'd chuckle about how confused everything was. She started speaking louder to me in public, even though my hearing was perfectly fine. She'd mention how I'd told the same story again, even when I hadn't. It was always subtle. Always with a tone of concern. "Have you looked into automatic bill payments?" she asked once. "It would make things easier." "Maybe Ethan should be added to your accounts," she said another time. "Just in case." Each suggestion seemed innocent. Helpful. But I felt it in my gut. Something wasn't right. Still, I wanted peace. I wanted to stay close to Ethan. He was all I had. So I gave in. I softened. I told myself I was imagining things. But that was before I knew she was stealing from me. Before I knew she had been planting seeds. Seeds meant to make Ethan doubt me. Seeds meant to take everything Robert and I had worked for. I sat up in bed and turned on the lamp. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out my laptop and logged into every one of my bank accounts. I went through every credit card statement from the last 6 months. And what I found made my blood run cold. This wasn't the first time. There had been smaller charges. Spread out. Just under the radar. An $800 dinner at a place I'd never been. A $1,200 spa visit during a week I'd been sick in bed. Designer store charges. Online boutique orders. Little pieces here and there. I hadn't noticed. She'd been testing me. Seeing how far she could go. And Paris wasn't just a trip. It was the grand finale. The worst part? Most of these charges weren't even on my personal card. They were on a business account. The business Robert and I had built together. Whitaker and Stone Consulting. I had nearly forgotten about that card. After Robert passed, I stepped back from the company. But I hadn't closed it. Ethan had been helping wind it down. He had access to that card. He was an authorized user. Which meant every charge Lena had made wasn't just theft. It was corporate fraud. And corporate fraud came with a lot more heat than simple credit card misuse. I sat back in my chair, staring at the numbers, feeling the anger grow in me like fire catching air. For 3 years, I'd been bending over backward to be accepted. To be respected. To be part of my son's new life. But Lena had made a mistake. She got greedy. She used the wrong card. And I remembered something very clearly. I wasn't just a lonely old widow. I was once the co-founder of a multi-million-dollar consulting firm. And I hadn't forgotten how to fight. I got up early the next morning, before the sun even rose. The house was quiet, just the soft creaks of old wood and the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I hadn't slept much, but I felt different. Focused. Steady. It had been a long time since I'd felt like that. I made myself a cup of black coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and stared at the credit card statement again. Then I picked up my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Janet, our old company's accountant. She used to manage the books when Robert and I were running things. We weren't close anymore, but I trusted her. When she answered, her voice was warm, even surprised. "Mrs. Whitaker? Oh wow. It's been a while." "I know, Janet. I'm sorry for the early call, but I need to see the financial records for Whitaker and Stone. All of them. Especially the company credit card statements from the last 8 months. There was a pause. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "I think someone's been using the company account for personal spending," I said. "A lot of it." "I can be at the office by 10, she replied. "We'll go through everything." I hung up and stood there for a long time, looking at the photo of Robert and me on the wall. It had been taken the year we'd started the business. He was holding a folder, and I had a pen tucked behind my ear. We'd looked so proud. Now here I was, preparing to dig through the ruins of what we'd built together. By 10:30, I was sitting in the same conference room where we used to meet clients. It felt strange to be back, like I had stepped into an old skin I'd forgotten I could still wear. Janet spread out the financial documents across the table, and we got to work. There were pages and pages of charges. Fancy restaurants, designer stores, hotel stays, online orders, and all of it labeled under business entertainment or client meetings. But I knew none of it was real. "This one here," I said, pointing to a $3,000 charge at a boutique in Beverly Hills. That was the week Lena said she was taking a solo retreat. She must have used the business card. Janet looked concerned. "Technically, only authorized purchases tied to company operations are allowed. If she's not an employee." "She's not," I cut in. "And even if she were, buying jewelry and spa treatments with company money isn't legal." "She could be in real trouble," Janet said, lowering her voice. "This is serious, Mrs. Whitaker. It's not just theft, it's fraud. And since Ethan is an authorized user." I swallowed hard. "That's what scares me." "Do you think he knew?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. He might have ignored the signs. Or maybe she convinced him she had my permission. But I need to find out. Janet nodded slowly. "Well, if this gets reported, it won't just be a slap on the wrist. The IRS, state investigators, maybe even the FBI, it could all come into play if they think the company was used for personal gain." I felt sick. I didn't want this to hurt Ethan. But I couldn't ignore it either. "I need 24 hours, I told her. "Let me talk to my son first before anything official happens." "You've got 1 day," she agreed. "After that, I have to report it. You know the rules." "Fair enough," I said. When I got home, I didn't sit down. I didn't cry. I walked straight to my filing cabinet and pulled out everything I had from the company. Contracts, old audits, ownership documents. I stayed up late reviewing every line, marking every date, matching every purchase with pictures Lena had posted online. That's when the full picture came together. Lena had stolen over $75,000 in total. And I could prove every dollar. But I wasn't done yet. I still needed to understand why she had gone this far. That's when I remembered something. About 6 months ago, Ethan had given me a spare key to their house, just in case. At the time it felt sweet, thoughtful. Now, it felt like an open door. I didn't go there to spy. I didn't want more evidence. I already had plenty. I needed to see how they lived. How they thought. How they justified spending so much when they were always saying they were tight on money. So the next day, while they were still on their Paris trip, I drove to their house and let myself in. It was beautiful. Too beautiful. Expensive furniture, crystal light fixtures, paintings that screamed pricey, and a wine fridge full of bottles I couldn't pronounce. It didn't take long to find the bills. They were everywhere, stacked on the kitchen counter, stuffed in drawers, shoved in a basket labeled important. Most of them were overdue. The mortgage was behind. Their car payments were months late. And the credit card balances? They were drowning. My money, company money, had been the lifeline keeping their world from crashing. And then I found her jewelry box. It was bigger than my bread box, painted white with gold trim. When I opened it, I nearly gasped. Diamond earrings. Pearl necklaces. A tennis bracelet with a price tag I recognized. One I had seen on the business statement from April. She hadn't even tried to hide it. But it was what I found at the bottom that truly made my hands shake. A folder labeled, Financial Plan, Whitaker Assets. Inside were printouts of everything tied to me. My house. My business. Even Robert's obituary. His business titles highlighted. There were also Google searches. How to get power of attorney over an elderly parent. Inheritance laws after spouse death. Signs of mental decline in seniors. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, was a timeline. Phase 1. Establish memory issue pattern. Phase 2. Get added to accounts by summer. Phase 3. Secure POA by Christmas. Phase 4. Full access in 18 months. I read it twice before I could even breathe. She wasn't just stealing. She was planning a takeover. A full one. She wanted it all. My house, my accounts, my life. And I'd let her get too close. I took pictures of everything with my phone, careful not to move a single item out of place. Then I left. I sat in my car outside their house for a long time, staring at the steering wheel with my heart pounding in my ears. That night, I didn't cry. I poured myself a glass of Robert's old scotch, sat in his favorite chair, and looked at the photo on the mantel again. She thought I was weak. She thought grief made me stupid. But what she forgot is, I built a business from the ground up with nothing but grit, spreadsheets, and a clear head. And now, I wasn't sad anymore. I was ready. The morning after I discovered Lena's timeline, I woke up with a plan. Not a vague idea. A plan. I walked into my closet and pulled out something I hadn't worn in years. My navy blue blazer. The one Robert bought me when we signed our biggest contract at Whitaker & Stone. It still fit. I buttoned it slowly, then looked in the mirror. I didn't see a grieving widow anymore. I saw Margaret Whitaker, businesswoman, strategist, survivor. I called Janet again. "I'm coming in," I said. "We're starting the process. I just need one last meeting before the report gets filed." "Are you sure?" she asked. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I've never been more sure." By noon, I was sitting in our firm's old boardroom with Janet and Claire, the company's legal advisor. The same table where Robert and I once closed million-dollar deals now held stacks of printed statements and screenshots of Lena's purchases. We went line by line. It was worse than we thought. 8 months of fraud, starting with small purchases. $300 dinners, spa treatments, designer handbags, and building up to that final $53,000 blowout in Paris. She was consistent, Claire said, flipping through the folder. The way she disguised it as business expenses is intentional. If this goes to court, it's going to look really bad for her. "What about Ethan?" I asked quietly. Claire hesitated. "He's on the account. That means he'll be investigated too. If it turns out he knew, he could face charges. And if he didn't know? He'll still be asked why he didn't notice. Why he didn't stop it." I nodded. "That's why I need to talk to him. Alone." Claire looked unsure. "We can give you some time. But if you wait too long, the liability could shift." "You'll have my decision tomorrow," I promised. That night, I waited. I knew Ethan and Lena were flying back from Paris. The moment my phone buzzed and I saw his name, I felt a strange calm wash over me. "Mom, we're home. Can we come by tomorrow night?" "Yes," I wrote back. "Come for dinner. There's something we need to talk about." The next day, I woke up early and began cooking. I didn't have to. I could have ordered takeout or served frozen lasagna. But instead, I made Ethan's childhood favorite, roast pot roast with garlic mashed potatoes, green beans, and sweet corn. The same meal I used to make every year on his birthday. I wasn't doing it for Lena. I did it for him. I wanted him to remember who I really was. They arrived right on time. Lena walked in wearing a beige trench coat, diamond earrings, and a new designer purse. I recognized the brand from the credit card statement. She gave me a sugary smile. "Margaret, you look wonderful. I hope we didn't worry you too much while we were gone. You know how anxious you get when Ethan doesn't answer his phone." I smiled back, playing along. "I'm just glad you're both home safe. Come in. Dinner's ready." We sat around the table. Ethan looked tired. More than tired, really. Like the kind of tired that sleep can't fix. He glanced between Lena and me, his forehead creased, his shoulders tense. "So," I said gently, "how was Paris?" Lena dove into the story. She talked about the 5-star suite, the view of the Eiffel Tower, the shopping on Rue Saint-Honoré. She was glowing as she spoke, describing each luxury in detail, but she was careful not to mention costs. "And this bracelet," she said, lifting her wrist and letting the diamonds catch the light. "I just couldn't resist." "When in Paris, right?" "Beautiful," I said calmly. "Is it new?" "Oh no," she lied without flinching. "Had it forever." I turned to Ethan. He still hadn't touched his food. "Ethan," I said quietly, "I found something strange while you were gone. Charges on the business account. Large ones. And I don't remember approving any of them." He frowned. "What kind of charges?" "Credit card purchases. $18,000 at Cartier. $9,500 at a hotel. Spa treatments, designer shops, jewelry." Lena froze. Just for a moment. Then she laughed softly. "Oh, Margaret. Don't you remember? You gave me your card. You said you wanted to treat us." "It was our anniversary." "Did I?" I asked gently. When was that? Last Sunday, she said. After dinner. You walked me to the car and handed it to me. Said it was a gift. She was smooth. I'll give her that. Even used Robert's name. You said Robert would have wanted you to be generous with family, she added softly. I nodded, then stood up and walked to the sideboard. I pulled out a folder and placed it in front of them. That's interesting, I said, because the card you used wasn't one of my personal cards. It was the company card, Whitaker and Stone's business account. Ethan's eyes widened. Wait, what? I opened the folder and laid out the statements, the matching Instagram photos, the itemized receipts. Each one told the story without needing words. This company is still active, I said. Still subject to audits. Still protected under federal fraud laws. Lena looked stunned. But it didn't last. This is ridiculous, she snapped. It was just a mix-up. A credit card mistake. $75,000 is not a mistake, I said firmly. It's fraud. Ethan pushed back his chair, the sound sharp against the hardwood floor. Mom, he said, pale. You told me it was $53,000. That was just Paris. The rest goes back months. I pulled out more pages. March 10th. Lou Bernardine Restaurant. $800. March 25th. Spa at the Pearl. $1,200. April 5th. Nordstrom. $2,600. Each charge matched something I had seen in their house. Ethan turned to Lena. You've been using Mom's business account? His voice was quiet, shaking. For months. She has more money than she needs, Lena said quickly. The business wasn't even doing anything. She's your mother, Ethan said, rising from his chair. You stole from her. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal, she said, her voice rising. We're drowning in debt. She has everything, this house, this life. And we're barely holding on. I just evened the scales. You forged business expenses, Ethan said. You dragged me into this. I'm an authorized user. Lena. If this blows up, I go down with you. I sat there, watching the person I loved most wake up to a truth he never wanted to see. And I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The room was heavy with silence. Ethan stood at the window, his back to us, while Lena sat still in her chair, her hands trembling slightly though she tried to keep her face calm. I could see her mind working, searching for an exit, a way to spin things in her favor again. I wasn't giving her that chance. There's more, I said quietly, pulling out my phone. Lena's head snapped up. I opened the photo album and slid the phone across the table to Ethan. I found this in your bedroom. In the bottom drawer of the jewelry box. He picked up the phone, frowning, and began scrolling through the photos. Each image showed a page of Lena's folder, the one labeled, Financial Plan, Whitaker Assets. Her notes. The printouts. The research. The plan. With every swipe of his finger, I saw his expression darken. Finally, he stopped on the last image. The one with the handwritten timeline. Establish pattern of confusion. Get added to accounts by summer. Power of attorney by Christmas. Full access within 18 months. He read it out loud. Then he looked up at Lena, and for the first time since this all began, I saw it happen. The exact moment when love left his eyes. You were planning to take everything, he said. Not just from my mother. From me too. Lena opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Ethan kept going, voice low and tight. Once you got power of attorney, once everything was in your name. What then? Were you going to divorce me? Leave me with nothing? Is that what the second folder was for? The one labeled, Asset Protection During Divorce? She finally found her voice. It's not what you think, she said quickly. That was just research. I didn't mean anything by it. I was scared. We're in debt, Ethan. I was trying to protect our future. By lying, he said. By stealing from my mother? By making me believe she was losing her memory? She is getting older. Lena snapped, desperate now. She's forgetful, she repeats herself. Stop, Ethan said, sharp. Don't you dare talk about her like that. He turned to me, eyes glassy. Mom. I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. I should've. You loved her, I said softly. And she's clever. That's not your fault. But I turned on you, he whispered. I believed her over you. I let her convince me you were confused, fragile. You were hurting too, I said. After your dad died, we both were. And when someone gives you comfort in the middle of that kind of pain, you grab it, even if it's fake. He looked away, jaw clenched. Lena rose to her feet suddenly, voice shrill now. You're all acting like I'm some kind of monster. Like I haven't done anything for this family. I've been there, at every dinner, every holiday trying to fit in, trying to be what you both wanted. You've been pretending, Ethan said, facing her now. There's a difference. She pointed at me, her eyes full of hate. You think you've won? That this little show means anything? You're just a bitter, lonely old woman with too much time and too much money. I didn't flinch. Instead, I stood up slowly and walked to my desk. I picked up the manila envelope I'd prepared the night before. I spoke with Claire, I said. Our legal advisor. The fraud report hasn't been filed yet. Lena blinked. But it will be, I continued, unless you sign the documents inside this envelope. She didn't move, so I walked over and placed the folder on the table. What is this? She asked, voice cold. It's an agreement, I said. To repay every dollar you stole, $78, $467, with interest, over the next 5 years. Her mouth dropped open. That's $16,000 a year. Correct, I replied. You'll also return every item purchased with company money. Jewelry, clothes, handbags, everything. What you can't return, you'll pay for. At full price. With what money? She spat. We don't have that kind of cash. Then sell your car. Get a job. Cut back. That's your problem to solve. She shook her head. This is insane. You can't force me to sign this. You're right, I said calmly. I can't. But if you don't, I'll file the report. Federal fraud. Up to 5 years in prison. Maybe more. Ethan rubbed his face, exhausted. There's one more thing, I added. You'll sign a statement admitting to the unauthorized use of company funds. I won't make it public unless you break the agreement. But if you do, I'll hand it to every authority I can find. Lena laughed bitterly. You're trying to destroy me. No, I said. You did that all by yourself. I'm just making sure you don't do it again. To anyone else. She stared at me, furious. Then at Ethan, who wouldn't even look at her. And what about him? She asked. You going to ruin his life too? I don't want to, I said honestly. But that depends on what you do next. Ethan finally spoke. Sign it. Lena. You know you have no other choice. She stared at him like she didn't recognize him. Like something precious had just slipped through her fingers and shattered. Then her face hardened. What else? She said bitterly, turning to me. There's more, isn't there? Yes, I said. You'll agree to cut off all contact with me. No dinners. No holidays. No messages. No manipulation. You'll stay away from my home, my business, and my life. She stood frozen, her lips pressed together, chest rising with shallow breaths. You can't do that, she hissed. I'm family. I looked at Ethan. She's your wife, I said softly. But she's no longer welcome in my life. He stared at the floor for a long time, and then said the words that broke the last thread holding her here. She won't be my wife for much longer. Lena gasped, and I could see it all over her face. The disbelief, the panic, the cracks forming. You can't mean that. But he didn't answer. And I didn't need him to. Lena didn't speak for a while. She just stood there, staring at Ethan like she was hoping to snap him out of it. Like this was all some big misunderstanding she could fix with another lie, another hug, another moment of sweetness. But it wasn't working. He didn't say a word. He didn't even blink. He looked like someone who had just walked out of a fog and was finally seeing everything clearly for the first time. Lena's voice broke the silence, but it had lost its sharpness. Now, she just sounded scared. Ethan, she whispered, I know you're upset, but you don't mean that. We're married. We've built a life together. You built it on lies, he replied without looking at her. And you used my mother as your foundation. That's not true, she said quickly. You're letting her turn you against me. She's been waiting for this. Enough, he said. Just one word. Firm. Final. Lena's mouth opened, then closed. She looked around the room like she didn't recognize it anymore. The family photos on the wall, the dishes on the table, the soft lighting. It was all slipping out of her hands. This isn't over, she said, but even she didn't sound convinced. Yes, it is, I replied. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. But before leaving, she turned back one last time. Her eyes locked on me. You'll regret this, she hissed. Both of you. When you're sitting here alone in this house with no one left, you'll remember this night. I met her stare and said calmly, I've been alone for 3 years, Lena. The only difference now is I won't have to pretend I'm not. Then she slammed the door behind her. The sound echoed through the room, rattling the windows and everything in between. Ethan and I stood in silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like it's full of everything that was just said and everything that still couldn't be spoken. Finally, he sat down at the table again, shoulders slumped, face pale. Mom, he said, voice cracking. I'm so sorry. I sat beside him, gently placing my hand over his. It was warm, but it trembled. I should have known, he said. Should have seen it sooner. She fooled both of us, I said quietly. You believed she loved you. I believed she respected me. We were both wrong. He shook his head. I feel stupid. You're not stupid, I told him. You're human. And you wanted it to work. We all did. Tears gathered in his eyes. He tried to blink them away, but one slipped down his cheek. She turned me against you, he whispered. Made me question you. Your memory. Your decisions. I let her. You trusted your wife, I said. There's no shame in that. He looked up at me then, really looked at me. Not with guilt, not with shame, just a deep sadness. The kind that comes from losing something you thought was solid. What do we do now, he asked. I thought about that. For now, I said, we pick up the pieces. One at a time. He nodded. Slowly. If I just listened when you first said something felt off. Don't punish yourself, I interrupted. This wasn't your fault. Ethan leaned back in the chair and took a deep breath. Then he stood up and walked to the living room window, staring out into the dark. I need to get out of that house, he said after a long pause. I can't be there right now. Not with her things. Her smell. Her lies everywhere I look. Your room's still here, I said gently. It's always been yours. He turned around, surprised. You'd let me move back in? I want you to, I said. Not forever. Just until you figure things out. That night, he brought over a single suitcase and a box of essentials. He didn't say much while unpacking. We were both tired, emotionally drained. But later, as I passed his room on the way to bed, I paused in the hallway. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding an old photo of Robert. I miss him, he said without looking up. I do too, I replied. Do you think he'd be disappointed in me? No, I said. He'd be proud. You finally saw the truth. And you stood up. Ethan nodded. Thanks for still believing in me. I never stopped, I whispered. 3 days later, the signed documents showed up on my front doorstep. No note. No apology. Just the envelope with Lena's signature on everything. The repayment agreement, the confession, the no-contact promise. She knew she'd lost. Boxes started arriving after that. First, it was the jewelry, neatly packed, each piece wrapped in tissue and labeled with return information. Then came the clothes, the purses, the shoes. Everything she had bought with stolen money came back. Some of it was clearly used. Some looked untouched. But it didn't matter. She was keeping her end of the deal. Because she didn't really have a choice. 2 weeks later, Ethan filed for divorce. He didn't say much about it, and I didn't ask. I knew it was painful. But it was necessary. He listed the reason as irreconcilable differences. Lena didn't contest it. And just like that she was gone. But this story wasn't really about Lena anymore. The real victory wasn't in the return things or the signed confessions. It was in something much more valuable. I had gotten my son back. The first Sunday after Ethan moved back in, I made breakfast for two. It had been years since I'd done that. The kitchen felt warmer, livelier somehow. Not because of anything new, but because my son was home. Not just physically but emotionally. He was present again, like the Ethan I used to know before grief and confusion pulled us apart. I plated the eggs and bacon just the way he liked them. When he walked into the room, his hair was still a mess from sleep, and he was wearing that same old college t-shirt he refused to throw away. For a moment, it felt like no time had passed at all. "Coffee smells amazing," he said, yawning. "Sit," I told him. "Breakfast is ready." He gave me a tired smile and slid into the chair across from me. He looked healthier already. Less pale. Less tense. Some of the weight from the past 3 years was slowly falling off his shoulders. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then he asked, "Any word from Claire?" I nodded. The final repayment came through yesterday. Lena paid off the full amount. Ethan looked surprised. "All of it?" "With interest," I said. "Whitaker and Stone is officially closed now. No more accounts. No more statements." He gave a slow nod. "And the house? Have you thought about what you want to do?" I set my fork down and took a sip of orange juice. Then I looked at him, unsure how he'd feel. "I'm thinking about selling it," I said. His eyebrows rose. "Really? It's too big for me now. And honestly, it holds too many memories. Some good. Some not so good. Where would you go?" I smiled. "I've been looking at a condo downtown. It's smaller, easier to manage. Right by the water." His face lit up. "That actually sounds really nice. Like a fresh start." "That's what I want," I said. "A place that feels like mine. Not a memory of what used to be." He nodded, and for the first time, I saw the idea settle in him without sadness. "What about you?" I asked gently. "Have you thought about what's next?" He leaned back in his chair. "Yeah, actually, I got a job offer." My heart skipped. "Tell me." "Morrison Consulting," he said. "They want me to lead their new digital transformation team. Downtown." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely thrilled. "When do you start?" "Next month. If I say yes." "I haven't signed yet." "Why not?" He looked at me seriously. "Because I wanted to make sure you'd be okay first." "Living alone again." I reached across the table and took his hand. "Ethan, I've been taking care of myself for 65 years. I think I can handle a bit more." He laughed softly. "Fair point. After everything that happened with Lena, I guess I worry about leaving you alone." "To what? Another manipulative daughter-in-law?" I smiled. He grinned. "Yeah, that. Well, don't worry. The next one will have to pass my inspections." "Oh, trust me," he said. "The next one is going to know exactly who you are, and she's going to respect that." Later that week, we went to see the condo I had been considering. It was on the 10th floor of a converted warehouse, right near the harbor. As soon as we walked in, I saw Ethan's breath catch. "Wow," he said. This is amazing." Floor-to-ceiling windows filled the space with light. The kitchen was modern, open. The walls were bare but welcoming, like they were waiting for new memories. "This could be it," I whispered. We walked from room to room, taking it all in. The bedroom had a walk-in closet and a small balcony overlooking the water. It felt peaceful, clean, like a new chapter waiting to be written. "There's a gym, rooftop garden, and 24/7 concierge," the agent explained. "Mostly professional women and early retirees live here. It's quiet, safe." "And the HOA?" I asked, remembering Robert's rule. "Always check the fine print." $400 a month, she said. "Includes utilities except cable and internet." I nodded. "Reasonable." Ethan stood beside me at the window, watching boats drift through the harbor like slow-moving birds. "I can see you here," he said quietly. "So can I." 3 weeks later, I signed the paperwork. The house was sold, and the condo was mine. 2 weeks after that, the movers came. Ethan took time off from work to help me pack. We worked side by side, sorting through 4 decades of belongings. Some things we kept. Others we gave away. A few we threw in the trash without a second thought. Like the Christmas photo where Lena had pushed herself into the center and cut me halfway out of the frame. Trash, I said firmly. Ethan didn't argue. We found another picture. Just him and me at Robert's grave. It was taken on the first anniversary after he died. We both looked tired and sad, but we were together. Real. That one goes in my bedroom, I said. By evening, the house was nearly empty. We stood together in the living room, looking at the space that had once been filled with so much life. Any regrets? Ethan asked. I shook my head. None. The condo felt like a true beginning. Everything in it was mine. Chosen by me for me. No more bending to please someone else. No more pretending to be less to keep the peace. I decorated it simply. Clean lines, soft colors, a few plants near the window. My favorite books on the shelf. A cozy chair by the glass door where I could watch the water. On my first night there, I poured a glass of wine, curled up with a blanket, and watched the sunset. It was quiet. But it wasn't lonely. It was mine. A few days after I moved into the condo, I got a text from Ethan while I was unpacking boxes. Dinner Sunday? I found a cute little Italian place by the harbor. My treat. I smiled. It's a date, I replied. But I'm buying dessert. I want to celebrate my freedom. And I meant that. Freedom wasn't just about getting away from Lena. It was about finally letting go of the need to be liked by someone who never planned to accept me. It was about remembering who I was before I started doubting myself. 3 months passed like a breeze. And in those 3 months, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I started saying yes to life again. I joined a book club. Then a photography class. Then a walking group that met every Tuesday morning by the waterfront. We'd walk, talk, and share stories. Some of the women were widows like me. Some were retired teachers, nurses, or businesswomen. None of them knew me as Ethan's mother or Robert's wife. They just knew me as Margaret. One evening, after book club, I walked into the lobby of my building and found Ethan waiting for me, holding a bottle of champagne and wearing a huge grin. What are we celebrating? I asked, surprised. A few things, he said. My promotion. Your new life. And the fact that we survived the worst thing that ever happened to our family, and came out stronger. We went upstairs to my condo, popped the champagne on the balcony, and watched the lights dance across the water. I love you, Mom, he said suddenly. I looked at him, surprised by the sudden emotion in his voice. I'm sorry it took me so long to come back to who I really am. I reached for his hand. I love you too, sweetheart. And honestly, I'm not sorry. He blinked. You're not. No, I said. Not even about the stolen money. Not even about the lies. He tilted his head, confused. Because if Lena hadn't gotten greedy, I explained, if she hadn't used the wrong card, she might have gotten away with it. She might have had me declared incompetent, gotten power of attorney, and taken everything. But her mistake forced me to wake up. It reminded me who I was. Ethan nodded slowly. She taught me a hard lesson, I said. But one I needed to learn. We sat there for a long time, just enjoying the breeze and the quiet. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking back with regret. I was looking forward, with excitement. The next morning, I got up early, made myself a cup of tea, and watched the sunrise through my big windows. The water outside sparkled like someone had thrown glitter on it. I felt light. Like someone had taken a backpack full of bricks off my shoulders. Later that week, I walked to a nearby farmer's market and bought myself fresh flowers. Just because. I stopped by a local cafe and had lunch alone. Not the sad kind of alone, but the peaceful kind. The kind where you smile to yourself for no reason. Back home, I started a new journal. On the first page I wrote, "This is not the end of anything. This is the beginning of everything." Meanwhile, I heard through the grapevine that Lena had moved to California. Rumor had it she was engaged again, to a man almost 30 years older with several rental properties and a luxury SUV. Ethan didn't talk about her anymore. He'd started dating again. Slowly. Cautiously. But he was smiling more. Laughing more. Living again. One night, after dinner, we were sitting on my balcony watching the boats glide past. "Do you think I'll ever trust someone again?" he asked. You already are, I said. You trust me again. He nodded. And when the right woman comes along, I added, you'll know. You'll feel it in your bones. He gave me a soft smile. Well, the next woman I date will have to pass your inspection. She won't get within 10 feet of you if she can't, I said with a grin. We clinked glasses and watched the sky turn orange and gold. Later that night, I lay in bed thinking about how far we'd come. From a cold kitchen and a stolen credit card, to this. To peace. To healing. To family again. A few weeks later, I started making real changes. Not small ones. Real ones. I went through all my closets and gave away everything that didn't feel like me anymore. Clothes I had kept out of habit. Dishes I never used. Picture frames with faces I didn't want to see again. I kept only what mattered. And what mattered was peace. I began decorating my condo slowly. Carefully. Each piece had a reason, a feeling, a place. A soft rug in the living room. A painting of sailboats for the hallway. A photo of Ethan and me from that summer we took a road trip after his graduation. Just the two of us. No one else. One afternoon, I walked into a small gallery near the waterfront and saw a painting that stopped me in my tracks. It was of a woman standing on a dock at sunrise, looking out over still water. Her back was to the viewer, but her posture said everything. She wasn't waiting for anyone. She was ready. I bought it on the spot and hung it in my bedroom. That night, Ethan came by for dinner. He'd had a long day at work, but I could see something different in his face, something settled. The deep lines from stress were fading, bit by bit. I saw Lena's name on the newsfeed today, he said while we cleared the plates. Oh. Her new fiancé is under investigation. Real estate fraud. I paused. Are you okay? He shrugged. Honestly. Yeah. I feel bad for the guy. But not for her. I nodded. She's always looking for a shortcut. She'll keep running, he said. From place to place. Person to person. Always pretending to be someone she's not. But you're not her problem anymore, I said gently. You're free. He smiled. So are you. We sat on the balcony again that night, like we often did. The water below was calm. The city lights flickered gently in the distance. Ethan leaned back in his chair and let out a deep breath. Sometimes I still think about it, he admitted. How close we came to losing everything. You didn't lose everything, I reminded him. You found your way back. Yeah, he said softly. But I almost didn't. I let her make me doubt the one person who's always been there for me. I reached over and squeezed his hand. You found the truth. That's what matters. I just don't want to make the same mistake again, he said. You won't, I replied. Because now you're paying attention. You've learned how to listen to your gut. He nodded, and then he laughed. And I've got the best lie detector in the world sitting across from me. Darn right you do, I said with a grin. We toasted our tea mugs, mine chamomile, his green, and fell into a comfortable silence. That weekend, we visited Robert's grave together. It had been a while since we'd gone. We brought fresh white roses and cleaned off the old leaves. Ethan knelt down, brushing dust off the headstone with his hand. I'm sorry, Dad, he whispered. I let things go too far. But I'm going to make it right now. For her. For me. For you. I stood beside him, my hand resting gently on his shoulder. I think he already knows, I said. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden light across the grass. We stood there for a few more minutes in silence, just listening to the wind, the birds, the quietness that comes with acceptance. On the drive home, Ethan turned to me. Do you ever miss her? Lena, I mean. I thought about it. No, I said honestly. I miss who I thought she was. Not who she really turned out to be. He nodded slowly. I think I miss the idea of our life together. The future we planned. There's nothing wrong with that, I told him. Letting go of a dream is one of the hardest things a person can do. But sometimes, I added, we have to let go of the wrong future to make space for the right one. He looked at me then, not just as his mom, but maybe for the first time, as someone who had walked through fire and come out stronger. Thank you, he said. For what? For never giving up on me. I smiled softly. You were never the one I needed to give up on. When we got back to the condo, he lingered in the doorway. "I think I'm ready to move out soon," he said. "Start over somewhere nearby." I hugged him tight. "I'll miss you. I'll still be around," he said. "Just not sleeping in my childhood bed anymore." And that was okay. Because this time, I wasn't being left behind. This time, we were moving forward. Together. A month later, Ethan moved into his own apartment just 10 minutes away from me. He didn't make a big deal out of it. Just packed his boxes, loaded his car, and gave me a long warm hug before leaving. No sadness. No guilt. Just a quiet promise that this was a good step forward. And it really was. We had dinner once a week after that. Sometimes at his place, sometimes at mine. We shared recipes, traded book recommendations, and even watched cheesy detective shows together on Friday nights. But more importantly, we talked. Really talked. About life. About trust. About mistakes and forgiveness. We didn't need to pretend anymore. There were no unspoken tensions, no lingering guilt. The house of cards had fallen. And in its place, we had something real. One sunny afternoon, I sat in the rooftop garden of my condo, watering the lavender I'd planted in a big clay pot near the edge. The breeze smelled like salt and sun. I could hear seagulls overhead, and the distant sound of a street performer playing the violin on the boardwalk below. It felt peaceful. Complete. Claire had called that morning to confirm everything had been settled with the legal paperwork. Lena had repaid the full amount. The documents had been sealed and stored. Ethan's name was cleared, the company account was closed, and there was nothing left to chase. Justice had been served, not through revenge, but through truth. That was enough. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and let the wind carry away the last pieces of what had once been a storm. That night, I wrote something new in my journal. There are storms we see coming, and storms that sneak in quietly. But every storm leaves a lesson. The trick is, don't just survive it. Learn from it. And rebuild smarter. That had become my truth. I had learned to listen to my instincts again. To stop silencing my voice just to keep the peace. To stop making excuses for people who treated me like I didn't matter. I learned that love isn't about what you give up. It's about what you protect. And sometimes, protecting yourself is the most loving thing you can do. But above all, I learned this. You don't have to be loud to be strong. You don't have to fight to be powerful. You just have to remember who you are, and refuse to let anyone take that from you. Ethan visited one evening with a surprise in hand. A small plant in a ceramic pot. "It's for your balcony," he said, placing it gently by the window. I looked at it and smiled. It was a little olive tree. "For peace?" I asked. He nodded. "And for strength." We sat down, had tea, and watched the sunset again. That had become our new routine. As the sky turned gold, Ethan said, "I've been thinking about Dad a lot lately." "Me too," I replied. He turned to me. "What do you think he'd say if he saw all this?" I smiled. "I think he'd say, 'You did good, kid. You found your way back.'" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think so too." We sat quietly for a while. No more sadness. No more tension. Just peace. As he stood up to leave, he hugged me tight and whispered, "Thank you for saving me from her." I pulled back, looked into his eyes and said gently, "You saved yourself. I just lit the way." And that's the real truth, isn't it? Sometimes we fall. Sometimes we trust the wrong people. Sometimes we lose ourselves trying to please everyone else. But if we're lucky, if we're brave, we find our way back. And when we do, we don't just go back to who we were. We become stronger, wiser, freer. Moral of the story. Never ignore the quiet voice inside you that says, something isn't right. No matter who they are, people who truly love you will never make you doubt your own worth or your memory, your mind, or your goodness. Stand firm. Stay kind. And when someone tries to take your peace, take it back, piece by piece, until you're whole again. You're never too old to reclaim your power. And it's never too late to start over.